We're here with another year with Mr. Kieron Gillen. How are you, sir?
Very well, you can't escape me.
I'm glad, because you do some excellent work, and I love talking about it.
Thank you very much.
So last time we met, you were climbing the charts with Young Avengers. You have another #1. So what's life at the top like?
I don't feel like it doesn't feel like the top, but it's been an enormously successful year. I mean, it's in between the Wicked Divine and everything else that's been happening. It's you end up realising, you're in an interesting place. Me and Jamie describe it as there's a phrase in pop music criticism called the imperial phase, where you get to basically do whatever you want and define the rules. And this is definitely our imperial phase. We say tongue-in-cheekly as we eat hot dogs, as in, I'm having mustard and ketchup. This is my imperial phase.
Dangerous.
But yes, it's fun. It's certainly better than the alternative.
Of course. So you have a lot of books coming out this year. Let's start with Asgard, where you're returning a little bit, kind of, with Angela. What was your pitch like when you were doing this? Because when it was first announced, it seemed like quite the undertaking.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's like I was asked, Kieron and I, we'd like to do an Angela book. We'd like you to do an Angela book. You got any thoughts on it? So I sat down and worked out, okay, what can do it? And at least part of it's the challenge of it. And so here's a character who has not been part of the Marvel Universe and has not been part of Thor's universe specifically. And I would like to, I want to make her part of the universe in a very real and natural and integrated way. So I want to make, the myths of the 10th realm match into what we know of the Marvel Universe and also what we know of Norse mythology. So there's that kind of game to it. And there's the fact that I quite like the idea of trying to make a very semi-clad 8-foot-tall, red-haired woman into an object of utter fear. As in, I want to write. It's like It's not what people wear that chooses to define them, but it's how actually people respond to them and how the storytelling choices. So I want to make her just genuinely a very scary person to be in the room with. At the same time, the personality and what makes it tick. So it's the fact that my blank slate's oversaying it, but there's a lot of room to say who is Angela. And dig into that, and that's kind of the fun. It's all the interesting technical challenge of I'm co-writing with Marguerite Bennett, but it's not like co-writing in a traditional way. And yes, we talk about the larger scale plot things, but I write 15 pages of the issue, which is the major story, which is kind of like building, which is the Angela's basic adventure, what's going on, and then Marguerite's doing the 5-page stories, which are embedded in the story. So there's a character called Sarah, who's kind of like Angela's old friend, who we're introducing here, and pretty much Sarah tells these stories. And Margaret writing them. So Margaret writes these little miniature pieces inside my larger piece. So I provide them as like a stage like a guest rapper is actually the metaphor I made up in an interview earlier, which I kind of like. Like Margaret comes in, drops a verse, and Phil Jimenez is doing my story, my bits of the story, and Stephanie Hans is doing Marguerite's. So that's kind of, and that makes it a very, very different feel. Funny as you mentioned returning to Asgard, that is actually part of the motivation. I kind of like. Anyone who's read my previous Asgard work will probably enjoy this, as in it kind of builds on some of the stuff I set in place there. Specifically, there's some stuff in Everything Burns, the final story me and Matt did for Thor, that comes directly out of that. So it's a weird one. It's meant to be very successful, introducing new characters. At the same time, it's building on all the mythos we've done so far, and it's also trying to be a different book, but different in a different way to other Marvel different books are. I know that's a horrible sentence, but you know what I mean. It's like it's not trying to ape Hawkeye. I'm not trying to redo Young Avengers, but we are doing something else. And it's taking what we're doing in Journey to Mystery and stepping in a very slightly different direction from that, and that's the plan anyway. Right. Hopefully, it's been a lot of fun so far.
Great. So how did the creative team come together? Because, like you said, this is a very unique dynamic creatively. Did you have any input on artists that you wanted? Did they present you with a couple co-writer options?
Me and Will Moss, our editor, we just basically tossed around names for co-writers. As in we try that, and no, that wouldn't, I don't think it's a good idea for that. I don't think we'd work well together. Or no way, she's far too good, and she'll be, why the hell should she be co-writing with me? As in, give her a book or check it. But it's like, and we thought Margaret's interesting that she writes conflicted and confused people really interestingly, and Angela beneath the steely surface has a lot going on. And at least part of my core of Angela is, the whole debt system of heaven, which is how it works, nothing for nothing. And actually the kind of the weird pathology. And of course that's a very alien idea, but it's really about somebody with a code. And a code is basically any set of rules you choose to put upon yourself. And the conflict between you how you think you are as a person, which is what a code is, and your actual desires, that's an interesting place to map. And I thought, and that's kind of, and I get some of that, when I think about those sort of problems, Marguerite is somebody who kind of has interest in that place. She's a very cheery, very nice person, and but she writes some really. She seems to be drawn to characters who are of a darker light. So that makes sense. It's like I imagine she was a really good Loki, is my way of putting it. And if I'm going to be a co-writer, I need somebody who's co-writing who can do a good Loki. We tried to write in names and basically who was available. And actually, I didn't suggest. We talked about tone, we talked about mood, and Will actually suggested both of them as options who were available. And I was like, Phil's great. And it's like Phil's a passionate artist. He's a writer as well, obviously. So working with an artist who's a writer, people often forget that Jamie's also a writer, as he did his own series, Suburban Glamour. I really like writing with people because they understand story, and not that saying all stories artists don't, but in terms of what the story is trying to do. And Phil had to be talked to before going on. Like my original pitch document was like, I'm not sure about this, and we got on the phone and we talked for like an hour and a half, and I said, no, I don't mean it like that. I mean it like this. Okay, try it. And we go back and forth, and I just try to explain why the character isn't just going to be. I described it earlier, like this object of fear. It's not just going to be the Punisher, and as in, no, it's a lot about the emotions and the complications, stuff which Phil's much more interested in. And we talked about some of my favourite comedy idea in the entire book kind of came from that conversation. So Phil, and there was that dialogue there. And it was dialogue whether you would take the job. And Stephanie's just somebody I've loved, and it's like I constantly want to do a book just with her at some point. And God knows if we'll ever get to that. But it's that kind of, if our schedules ever aligned, I'd love to work with her because she did it Journey to Mystery 645. That's one of my probably favourite issues I've ever done ever. So yeah, it's an interesting group of people.
So has Neil Gaiman, seen anything that you've done so far?
Not as far as I know. It's something if I would not want to know either. It's almost like I'm trying to think of a parallel. No, I can't even work out any parallel. But no, it's like I have no idea. I really have no idea. I don't even think it's like Vader has Lucas. Is Lucas going to read my Vader? I have no idea, and I wouldn't want to know either in some ways because you've got to make it your own. This is kind of the weird thing about work for hire, and these accounts aren't your own. You feel more like a nanny in many ways, but you're hired to be the best for them, and you can't think about previous care holders of it. You've got to do the job that is here. You can't think about what the previous nanny may have made of you. If that makes any sense, I'm not sure it does. I'm going to abandon that nanny metaphor and never return to it.
Kieron Gillen, the new Mary Poppins.
That is true.